Hi, we're still talking about Chapter 10. This is video number 5 on that topic of interviews. So we've been discussing kinds of questions, and we've been talking about informational questions, right? You've transitioned away from introductory questions into kind of what I would call the body of the interview. You're getting the information, you're asking informational questions. So you've made an effort to use some good techniques, and you need to understand some nonverbal things that go on. And keep in mind, it's not just about the interviewee making these nonverbal communications. You might be also making some nonverbal communications, so you want to be aware of that and control that. So the respondent reactions are going to involve 4 kinds of nonverbal communications. There's your categories: proxemics, chronemics, kinetics, and paralinguistics. So proxemics is comes from that word proximity, like how close you are. So a person you're interviewing may lean back if they you shift to a conversation topic they don't like or aren't too comfortable with. They may kind of lean away from you, something like that. And again, some of this depends on culture. People may lean closer. You have to kind of work on that. Chronemics is timing of how the discussion is going, right? So if your person you're talking with is having a long pause, maybe they don't want to talk about something, maybe they're trying to remember, you got to work on that. You might use a long pause. Remember, it goes both ways. You might use a long pause because you want them to talk some more. People will frequently feel uncomfortable, like if you ask them a question and they give a short answer and you'd like them to talk a little more, don't even say anything, and sometimes they'll just start talking again. Kinetics is how they're moving, right? Are they using the hands? Are they bouncing up and down like they're nervous? Things like that. That's kinetics. And of course, again, you want to be aware of that. You're trying to stay comfortable. You're trying to keep them relaxed. So be aware of your kinetics as well. Paralinguistics is not necessarily nonverbal because you're verbalizing something. It's just like the way you say it. So if you can imagine somebody saying something like no, and they're looking down, they're going no, or they're going no, right? There's a big difference in how people say things. So you need to be aware of that as you interview people. In your informational questions, where you're trying to get information out of a person, remember you're developing a theme. Now, you're trying to get them to help you, right? So that's kind of the main overarching theme. And as you're talking to them, you're garnering their help, and you're trying to stick with whatever the part is. Like if you think they were a witness and saw something, sticking to that. And talking to them about the main theme. You're not trying to get emotional reactions out of them. You're just trying to get information out of them. So be aware of that, and pick words that are not confrontational. Like, don't say I'm investigating a fraud. Just say I'm trying to get some information about something that happened. Right? So be careful. Some people don't volunteer information. They have to be asked. So go ahead and ask. Don't be reluctant. But, lead up to sensitive questions, right? Lead up to that thing. But be confident and ask the question, right? That's what you're there for. You're there to get the information. I'm just here getting information. So how do you transition into actually getting information, right? So begin with background questions. Things like, what is your job in this department? Can you tell me what your assignment includes? What kind of things do you see when you're doing that? Some general things. So you're not leading them, you're just trying to get some things, and you're observing them, right? Because you're having to figure out, are they hostile? Do they want to answer? Are they trying to be helpful? And then getting to sensitive questions carefully. Again, using careful words that aren't going to make people have a hostile reaction. And you transition into that. Now, when you're trying to talk to people, you're going to meet some resistance. Right? And they may not be the suspect. They may not have had anything to do with it. You're just trying to get some information out of people. Depending who they are, they'll either want to be helpful or not. They'll have things like, I'm too busy, right? And I don't know anything. I don't remember. What do you mean by that, right? So they're going to have, so you will want to maybe look in the book and be prepared with some responses to these kinds of things. It's only been, I'm too busy. And then you say, you're always wanting them on your side. So it's like, I understand you have an important job. I understand you have a lot going on. I understand this is a busy time. Something like that. You're sympathizing with them, right? And then you say, this won't take very much time. I'm already here, and it won't take much time. This way we won't have to interrupt you again. Something like that, right? If we get this done now, we won't have more interruptions in the future. Something like that. So you're trying to get them on your side. I don't know anything. I don't remember. Then you're saying, oh, well, I'm just here to get information, so I would like to learn something about what you maybe do know in the department, like how the internal controls work, right? Like if I don't know anything about that fraud, right? I don't want to talk about it. I don't know anything about that. They say, well, I'm just here to get information in general. I wonder if you could help me by telling me how this transaction was supposed to work. Something like that. Like do that. Like you're listening to what they say and you're responding to it. There are difficult people in this world, and it's not necessarily because they committed the fraud. We've all worked with some difficult people, and they're going to be difficult with you as a fraud examiner, and it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that they are guilty. But sometimes they are guilty, and they're trying to throw you off too. They act angry. They're trying to get you to leave them alone. I've certainly had people trying to get me to do something I shouldn't do, and they act like they're angry, and they try to force you into it. So one thing is, don't react. Remember, none of this is personal. You're investigating a fraud. Your boss is paying you to do it. None of it's personal, even if they say something ugly. Disarm them, and what usually disarms people is agreeing with them, going along with what they're saying, and changing your tactics up a little bit. So when they say something like, I don't have to talk to you, say, oh, I know you don't have to talk to me. But I did want to talk to you because I needed your help. It's like you agree with them, and that takes them. It's not like you say, you don't push back. It's like you bring them in, right? So disarming people, changing tactics, making it easy to say yes is a great way to go. So if you have a difficult person, you disarm them in some way. With a volatile interview, so when you know you're going to be interviewing a suspect, when you know you're going to interview the suspect's good friend, maybe co-suspect, spouse, somebody who would want to be defensive, a volatile interview, if you feel like it's going to be volatile, you may very well want to, first of all, understand physical symptoms. They're going to be nervous. They're going to be on edge. You need to stay very calm with them. You may want to have a second person with you, quite frankly, especially if it's a suspect who's committed a crime. Doesn't hurt to have another person there, a witness with you for what they say. Typically, you want to interview people alone, but if you know it's going to be volatile, get someone with you. Be prepared for them to act angry. Don't take it personally. Overcoming their objectives. You're just trying to get help. You're agreeing with them. So a volatile interview, you want to make it not volatile. Absolutely never escalate. You're always de-escalating, right? So that is an important factor to consider. All right, so when we come back on our next video, what we're going to look at is assessment questions. So we've talked about informational gathering questions, and we're going to move on to assessment questions and admission questions.